for coming. A lot of content, but I don't think I'll have trouble fitting it in today. Is this joke appropriate? My name is Damian Synadinos. My company's Ethical Solutions. I was a tester for 25 years. I'm a full-time public speaker now for the last 10. And a whole bunch of other things that probably relate to you in different ways. But today we're going to talk about jokes, the appropriate of jokes. I'm going to relate that all back to risk and you and your job and your context. This will not be a funny talk, even though the word joke is in the title. It's not going to be funny unless I say something inadvertently stupid or silly and you laugh at that and it's funny. But even though it's not a funny talk, you can start thinking of your favorite joke. I'd like to hear it during open season. I love jokes, as long as it's appropriate. What's appropriate? Hopefully this talk will help you, give you the tools to realize what's appropriate. It won't answer yes or no, it is or isn't appropriate. Give you some tools that you can help determine that on your own. Sound good? All right, away we go. Thank you. Anybody know this English idiom? What's this picture depicting? Don't poke the bear. Who said that? You said that. What's don't poke the bear mean? Can you expand on that? What's that idiom mean?
It means that, you're gonna wake something up that could cause a problem.
Yeah. So yeah, you could wake something up that causes problems. You might be doing something unwise that could cause unwanted consequences. But poking a sleeping bear might be unwise because the bear could wake up and maul you, right? There's a lot of other variations of this phrase. Don't poke the bear is one. Don't let sleeping dogs lie. That's another one. Don't stir the pot. Play with fire and you'll get burned. These are all similar type of things. Maybe you've heard of play stupid games.
Get stupid prize.
Win stupid prize, get stupid prize, yes, and the more maybe not so PC FAFO, that acronym. All right, so there's different ways that you can say what I'm trying to say here. If you do unwise things, you might have unintended, undesirable consequences, and that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the stupid games that we sometimes play, and the stupid prizes that we win from winning, playing those stupid games. But more importantly, I want to talk about how do you even know if it's a stupid game or not. I want to help you determine whether the game is dumb or not, whether it's stupid or not, and then I'll talk about how learning to avoid the stupid games can help reduce the stupid prizes that you win. All right. So I'm talking about stupid prizes or consequences. They're cause and effect. Every action has an equal and opposite effect. Causality, if you're familiar, you study causality. It's always a many-to-many relationship. So there's never one thing that leads to one or one to many. It's always many-to-many. There's many different things, known and unknown, that lead to many other effects. Many causes lead to many effects. Some of those consequences are fine, A-okay. Some of them are undesirable consequences, any result or effect of an action, but I'm talking about undesirable consequences, in this case, of telling an inappropriate joke. So I'll give you some examples of real life undesirable consequences for telling inappropriate jokes. The first is Justine Sacco. Has anybody ever heard of this person? In 2017, Justine Sacco, she was the senior director of corporate communications at a large company. Justine's taken a vacation to Africa. She jumped on a plane. You're not, have you heard this story?
I remember this.
So yeah, this is the big story. Justine jumped on a plane. Before she took off for Africa, she tweeted out a couple of jokes, put her phone in plane mode, and took that many-hour flight. When she landed, she turns her phone on, and her phone blows up because she's trending worldwide, not in a good way. Okay, she is being publicly shamed. Her simple tweet to her few hundred followers had it blown up. It got reshared and reshared and reshared. All of a sudden, people across the globe are shaming her publicly for this, what she thought was an innocuous joke, but it turned out many people deemed it to be inappropriate. So public shaming, I'm sure that was not a desired, intended consequence. That's an undesirable consequence. This particular case, while you might have heard of it, there's a guy named Ron Johnson who wrote a film called So You've Been Publicly Shamed. He has a TED Talk when online shaming goes too far. So this is a very public case that people have talked about quite a bit. So public shaming is one unintended consequence of an inappropriate joke. Bubba Watson, he's a professional golfer on tour. In 2017, he was after a particularly bad round. He's being interviewed by the media, and he makes an offhand comment, and people didn't like it. A lot of people made complaints about it, and several days later, he issued a video apology saying, "I'm so sorry for what I said. Let me explain it. Let me apologize." So that's another unintended consequence to an inappropriate joke or a comment. I don't think he planned on doing that. He certainly didn't feel happy about doing it. Victor Paul Alvarez, I doubt you know who that is. In 2015, he was the Boston.com associate editor. He wrote an article about then Speaker John Boehner, and he included a joke in it. People did not like it. He got fired. Fired. Another example of an unintended consequence for a joke, for an inappropriate joke. Tyson Benz, this one's sad. An 11-year-old boy, middle school student, had a girlfriend. He went home one night and started getting texts that his girlfriend had killed herself. He was so distraught, Tyson Benz killed himself as well, committed suicide. Turned out that those texts were fake. It was just a prank from other students. So being publicly shamed, issuing apology videos, all the way to something as severe as suicide, death. Anybody familiar with Chris Rock and what happened a couple years ago? There we go. Oh, no, slap around the world. Yes, he's on stage at the Oscars and whatever it was, and he told the joke, and Will Smith family came up and slapped him. That is definitely an unintended consequence for an inappropriate joke. Now, there are lots and lots and lots of other examples. Roseanne Barr making a joke version of the national anthem and getting booed. There's Al Franken taking the photograph that forced him out of office, out of the government. And I'm sure that if you Google, fired for a joke, I just did this before I came. On August 8th, the car salesman was suspended indefinitely for posting a joke on social media. August 20th, fans are calling for the firing of ESPN's Ryan Clark over an on-air joke. It's not too hard to find at least just getting fired for a joke, but I've also showed all these other unintended consequences. And what about you? I bet that you could add your name to this list, even though maybe you haven't been fired for a joke or publicly shamed, globally shamed. But if you told a joke to somebody and you intended to make them laugh and they didn't laugh, that's an undesirable, unintended consequence. It's not as severe as getting publicly shamed or issuing a video apology, but if you intended something and it didn't happen, it's undesirable. So there's lots of examples of undesirable consequences. So let's talk more about undesirable. It's not wanted or desirable, it's harmful, objectionable, unpleasant. Now there are, this is unintended. There's John Lewis, the American politician, civil rights activist, talked about getting necessary good trouble. Sometimes he's sought out to make trouble for a particular purpose. In that case, it's intended. He's making trouble. People like trouble's bad. And in this case, it's intended trouble. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about unintended, undesirable consequences. So let's talk about undesirable consequences with regards to an appropriate or inappropriate joke. What the heck is appropriate? It's suitable or proper for some circumstances. Apt, it's fitting, it's right for this particular context. That's what appropriate is. So the question I'm asking in this presentation is this joke appropriate? It's the title of the talk. Is this joke appropriate? Here's the answer, and you can all go home. It depends. What a context-driven answer that is. My goodness. Yeah, it depends. Depends on a lot of different things. Now, at the very top, I think it depends primarily on the way that you view the world, your worldview. Some people view the world as they believe things should be. This is how I think things should be in the world. However, other people view it more pragmatically, practically as it actually is. This is how things actually are. So it depends on your worldview. Let's look at some. So is your worldview, let's talk about philosophical, theoretical, hypothetical. If you say, this is how I think the world should work, sometimes I operate in this mode. This is how I think things should be. The answer to this is all jokes are appropriate. All jokes are appropriate. You say, well, Damian, I haven't even told you the joke. How can you possibly know that all jokes are appropriate? I said, well, if this is my worldview, then I know that that's the answer, because the opposite answer, no, that joke is inappropriate, leads to a slippery slope. If I have the right to say that you can't joke about A, letter A, A is my favorite letter, don't joke about that. So that grants somebody else the right to say, well, I particularly like B, so if you can't joke about A and I give you that right and I respect it, and I also say that you can't joke about B, and somebody else says, I like the rest of the alphabet, please no alphabet jokes. Somebody else says, no language jokes, and somebody else says, why are we joking at all? Life is serious. It's a slippery slope till you get to the point where there's no humor and no joking, no levity at all. So by this worldview, through logic and reason, theoretically, technically speaking, all jokes should be appropriate. Now, I'm not the first person to realize this. It doesn't work exactly in that manner. Let me see.
Did we take focus away? Yeah, sorry.
We just click back here. Click, there we go. We're good. Why doesn't this work? It seems logically it should work. Theoretically, technically it should work. It doesn't work because we live in a world full of differing beliefs. Your beliefs are different than mine, we're different than theirs. Feelings and views, various values, ideologies, social cultural norms, unspoken air quote rules, heuristics, much more. They guide our behavior. They help us determine, among other things, what is and is not appropriate. That's the world that we live in. Now, I'm not the first to realize this. There's many people that realize this. This is a 2015 documentary called Can We Take a Joke? It talks about Western's examination of their apparent contemporary intolerance towards edgy comedy. So they interviewed lots and lots of Western comedians and said, are people too sensitive? Are they oversensitive? Now, obviously, a lot of comedians are operating with the worldview that technically all jokes should be appropriate. I'm a comedian, I'm just joking. It's just a joke. So all jokes should be appropriate. However, ask Bubba Watson if he agrees. He'd say, well, I might agree that all jokes, it was just an offhand comment. They should be taken in that sense of humor, but I had to issue a public apology. Now, even the New York Times reviewing this movie said it would be better if the movie at least acknowledged the fact that some jokes ought not be told. At least acknowledge that. but this movie doesn't do it because it comes from that particular point of view. So it doesn't seem that that point of view works all the time. Why is it? Because we don't exactly live in that world. We have different views, different beliefs. We live in a world that's practical, pragmatic, realistic. So let's examine that. If this is your worldview, is this joke appropriate? Here's the answer. Then you can all go home. Now we're back here. Context driven, doggone it. I'm a context driven, not just tester, but person. I allow the details to help inform and influence the actions and that I do, the things that I say. I live a context driven life. So is this joke appropriate? It depends. It depends on what? Well, let me sum up the entire talk with this. Think before you speak. Any of you have children? I have children myself. I've often said this to my kids. Think before you speak. And then I pat myself on the back and go, now that's some top-notch parenting right there. Look what I just did. I taught my kid that. Meanwhile, my kid is going, okay, what exactly should I think before I speak? You haven't given me any details. What am I supposed to think about? That's a good point, kid. All right. So I'm going to give you some things that could think about before you speak, before you act, that might help you make better decisions. Make better decisions about the things you do, the things you think about, the things you talk about, the jokes that you make. I've collected these in something called the funny framework. Framework is just a collection of ideas, structure, guidelines, rules of thumb that help you navigate. So the funny framework, here's one thing you can consider before telling a joke. Your intention. For what reason are you telling this joke? As I said earlier, maybe you told a joke to a friend or a group of people to make them laugh. Maybe the reason for telling that joke was to entertain, to bring mirth and happiness into the world. But maybe you're telling it because you want to bring focus to yourself. That's another reason people can tell jokes. Look at me over here, spotlight. Maybe you're telling it to drive an agenda and a narration, a story. There's many different reasons that you might be telling this particular joke. So think about, why am I doing this in the first place? I like starting with the why. Helps you understand how and what you're doing. So why are you doing this in the first place? What are your intentions? Here's another thing you might consider before telling a joke to help you determine if it's appropriate or inappropriate. What's the content? What's the subject matter, the topic of this particular joke? What am I talking about? Am I talking about an orphanage? Am I talking about corporation? Am I talking about religion and politics? What's the content of this? Because that might make a difference. Here's another thing, the medium. What is the means by this joke that this joke is being told? Am I writing it down and passing it as a note in class? Is it verbal? Am I just speaking it to somebody? Is it digital, like Justine Sacco tweeted it out? Is it remote? Am I talking to somebody directly or over the phone? Is there a speaker? How is this joke being told? Because that can matter. Why does it matter? Because this one. What's the control? Can I control who can actually hear my words and my message and my joke? What's the reach? Justine Sacco only had a few hundred followers, but when she told that joke, it spread out. She couldn't control the reach anymore. It went viral, it went global. So what's the reach? Maybe if you're just talking to a friend, they might repeat it and say, Damian told me this joke, but that's a different type of reach. So it's much less if you're just talking. Here's another one, the context, and the context-driven person. What are the other circumstances that form the setting, the conditions, the environment, the situation that the joke is being told? The devil's in the details. These are all, there's a mishmash, et cetera category of all these other little details that might matter when you're telling the joke. Are you in the office? Are you at church? Are you at a funeral? Telling a joke? Are you at a wedding? That might, same joke, different context, different settings might make a huge difference to whether people deem it appropriate or inappropriate. Not done. How about the audience? Who are you telling this joke to? If you're at the funeral, maybe you decided it's fine, but are you telling it to the widow? Are you telling it to another person, a coworker? Are you telling it to your uncle? Who is the audience that you're telling it to? What do you know about them? If you're telling it to the widow, maybe you know that you can tell it to her because she's been a jokester her entire life and you know that she'll appreciate it. Or maybe you don't know the widow, so you don't know much about them and you're not sure how they might take this joke. Your coworkers, how much do you know about them and their background and their experience and their belief systems? How much do you know about this audience? Because that might make a difference whether it's deemed appropriate or inappropriate. What about your reputation? What's your standing as the joke teller in this context? Maybe you're the black sheep of the family and people don't really trust you. And even if you know a lot about your family, they might not like you. So you have a low standing. And therefore, even if somebody else in your family tells the same joke, if you tell it, it's deemed as inappropriate. That might make a difference. These are just different factors. What about this? Interpretations. Is the joke desired to be understood? How is it desired to be understood? How might it actually be understood? It's different, actual and expected. When I tell this joke, I expect that most people will interpret it this way. However, it might also be interpreted in other ways. What are those other ways? Let's look at it in this way. What are the consequences and likelihood for each interpretation? So I say, here's how I think that most people will take it. And I think it's very likely that most people will take it this way. There's a small little chance that people will take it another way. Now, if they do, they might punch me in the face. Maybe I'll get fired or publicly shamed. That's pretty catastrophic, but I also think it's super unlikely. Or let's flip it around. I think that nothing bad will happen. People might interpret it differently, and it's very likely they'll interpret this joke differently. But even if they do, they'll just go, it wasn't very funny. That's not a big deal. It's unintended, undesired consequence, but it's not a big deal. So this is another restatement of that silly little risk equation, impact and probability equals risk. It's an oversimplification, but that's why this might seem somewhat familiar to you. So these are some of the things that I have included in my funny framework to help me make better decisions before I tell a joke. It's not a comprehensive list, certainly not. What's missing? What could you add to this list to make it more robust? What else could you consider before telling a joke? No wrong answers.
How drunk people are.
How drunk people are. Tell me why that might be an interesting factor to consider before telling a joke.
Typically, people's ability to take offense is diminished by the more alcohol they have consumed.
Okay.
Also impacts memory of the next day.
And
They
the-
can repeat it.
the reach.
Yeah.
Day.
The reach is impacted by the drunkenness. I like that. All right, marrying two ideas. Good addition. Other additions, what could you add to
What's
this?
the opposite? People are like, oh, you're drunk? I'll forgive you.
So kind of the reputation thing, right? Oh, Damian's normally a funny guy, but now he's wasted and he's just saying idiotic. Yeah, okay, I get that. Let's move on. What else? What can you add?
Who's around you when you're telling it that might overhear it?
I like that. So you intended for this audience and somebody overhearing. Yeah, in the
That's
background.
never happened to me.
Never. Listen, has anybody ever done this before telling a joke?
Not me.
You're using some of this funny framework already. That's what that is. You're considering who's around, who might overhear this. Anything else that you could add to this list? These are great additions.
Is it too soon?
Too soon, timing, absolutely, too soon. Gilbert Gottfried was famous in the comedian circles as making the very first post 9/11 joke publicly. And he took a lot of flack for it because he said, oh, too soon. But he decided to be brave and come out and try this new joke. Many people deemed it inappropriate for that reason. It's too soon. Plus the subject matter and all sorts of other people just didn't like Gilbert. So if it came from somebody else, maybe they go, oh, that's okay. So there's a variety of reasons, but timing, absolutely, that's a great addition. So I've shown that there are many other things and factors that you can think about to help you make better decisions before you tell a joke. So some of you are already criticizing this framework, as you should. In a room full of testers, you should criticize and test ideas. So this idea, I've already tested it myself. Here's some criticisms that I've heard about this particular framework. Number one is, that's a lot of work, Damon. You listed 10 things, we've listed 3 more. That's 13 things you expect me to think about before I tell a joke? I mean, come on, that's a lot of work. I say, yes, but practice and you get better. Okay, now practice makes permanent, not practice makes perfect. So if you practice poorly, it'll get worse. But generally speaking, with any type of skill, generally speaking, the more you do it, the more you play basketball, you get better at basketball. The more you practice baking, the better you'll make cakes. Generally speaking, the more you practice this, the better it will get. The more fast, you'll do it faster, you'll do it more naturally, without explicit thinking, it'll be subconscious. I just said, how many of you do this before you tell a joke? You're already doing some of these things. I'm just writing them down, putting them on a slide and making them explicit so you're thinking about them more obviously. So some of you are already doing these things and you're not like, boy, that's a lot of work to do this. I have to think about who's around. You just did that naturally. I'm just suggesting some other factors that if you practice them, they'll also become natural and you start to do them without thinking. Another criticism, boy, Damian, it might not work. What if I go through all 13 of these things that you and others have mentioned, and I answer them all, and I come out and I say, but I think that this is probably a safe joke to tell, and I tell it, they still punch me in the nose. Somebody thought it was inappropriate. Your stupid framework doesn't work. I go, you're right, because it's not an algorithm. It's a heuristic. Algorithms, you put certain input, it will spit out. This is not a computer that will spit out an answer and say, beep. This joke is appropriate, you may tell it, and it's going to be correct. Heuristics are fallible methods of problem solving. What's your definition from the RSD? Do that.
Heuristic is a fallible method for making a decision or
Problem solving.
solving a problem.
Okay, there we
There
go.
we go.
There we go. So it's ways that our brain uses insufficient information, makes connections, and moves forward in the absence of sufficient information. But the point is that they're fallible. Yes, they're not algorithmic, they're fallible, which means that might not work, but they also could work. And I guarantee if you don't use this framework, the chances of having an inappropriate joke and the consequences, the stupid prizes that you win are greater. So yes, it might not work, but without using it, the chances of bad things happening are far greater. I think that's reasonable to say. I'll give you an analogy how this relates. Riding a bike. Many of us know how to ride a bike, and if you think about when you started off, you were probably very wiggly on the bike and very slow, and you had a lot of conscious thought, left foot, right foot, left foot, I got to turn the handles, and which handle do I brake with? There was a lot of conscious thought. You weren't very good at it, you were wobbly, and you probably fell down a lot. But you practiced and you practiced and you practiced. And the more you practice, the less it became explicit left foot, right foot. It just became natural. The more you practice, the less you fell, the faster you got. And here we go. Oh, look at that guy riding a bike. How great is that? That doesn't mean he never falls off. It's also fallible. So this is my analogy that even though you practice and it becomes more quicker and more natural, it's infallible. What's the word? It's fallible. It still may fail. Thank you. But it's still a useful framework because the absence of it is worse. All right. So what, Damian? So what does this mean? So bring this home. The funny framework offers us information. Answering these questions gives us information. With that information, it can allow us to have insight. That insight can lead to better decisions. Those better decisions can help avoid, not eliminate, but help avoid inappropriate jokes. Remember, it's fallible. And avoiding inappropriate jokes helps reduce, not eliminate, undesirable consequences. So if you were to think about Bubba Watson or Justine Sacco, they don't have crystal balls. They can't look in the future and say, oh, if I tell this joke, I'm going to have to issue a video apology in 3 days from now. That doesn't sound very fair. It was just an offhand little comment. Whether he thinks it's fair, unfair, just or unjust, he looks in the crystal ball and this is the actual future. I bet that Bubba Watson would have made a different decision. Now, what if Bubba had this framework and he had that crystal ball and says, I'm going to ask these questions, and it turns out that I can see that the interpretation of this joke might be taken in this way. If that happens, other people might be offended. They might think it's inappropriate, and bad things might happen. I might have to issue an apology. Maybe he'd make a different joke and decide not to make that comment. So the funny framework offers information which eventually leads to reducing undesirable consequences. So what again, Damian? Come on, it's a testing conference. Bring it home for me. So the punchline. Many jokes have an unexpected twist at the end. That's the whole purpose. The whole way that humor works, it's a twist on what's expected, it becomes unexpected. So, just like jokes, this presentation has a little punchline, a little twist at the end. The funny framework, I named it the funny framework because it's all about jokes and haha funny, but funny also has another alternate meaning. That's things that is interesting. Like, oh, isn't that funny? Not funny like humorous, but isn't that interesting? So I named the funny framework because it fits in with this joke theme, but also because it has an interesting aspect to it. It applies to jokes, obviously. I talked about how these factors, you walk through them, become more natural and fast at them. They'll help you make better decisions about whether you should or shouldn't tell a joke because you might have more information about whether it might or might not be deemed appropriate or inappropriate. Obviously, this framework applies to jokes, but it also applies to memes. Memes are kind of visual joke. Are you on Slack or a work Slack? Anybody post memes on social media? And sometimes those memes might be taken the wrong way. Walk through the framework before you post that meme. Maybe you decide not to post it. Boy, this is a work Slack instead of a public site. Maybe the public site's worse because the reach, I can't control the reach. Maybe I shouldn't post this meme. Who knows who's going to see this? It also applies, the funny framework, to comments or questions. You're in a meeting and you have a question or a comment. Think about why am I asking this? Am I to draw attention to myself and say, hey, everybody, look at me. I want to show you how smart I am. Or is it because you desire an answer to your question? If you're going to ask a question here, why are you asking it? Think about the intentions. Think about your the audience. Who are you speaking in front of? What do you know about them? What do they know about you? What's your intended interpretation of your question? Do you hope that I understand it? What if I misunderstand your question? You can walk through the framework and it'll help you ask better questions and make better comments. To any action, anything you do, you can use this framework to assess whether that action is appropriate or inappropriate. I'm talking about risk. This is tool assessment. Before I get to that, tool assessments, we're a bunch of testers. We might have to assess different test tools. We might have to perform testing, produce testing reports and bug reports. You can use this framework before reporting a bug, for example, and say, well, I found something. What is the intent of me reporting this bug? Is it something that I think is going to be fixed? Is it important? What's my standing in the company? Am I a junior tester that people might not have enough knowledge of me or respect for me? Am I a senior tester that people might take my word with more weight and gravitas? Who's the audience that's gonna see this? It's gonna be a bunch of developers. Could executives see this bug report? You can walk through the framework to help you with things that you do in your job often or daily. And finally, here's where I was going. Anything where there's risk, potential risk. Anytime that there's potential risk, whether it's telling a joke, assessing a tool, reporting a bug, reporting your test summary results, asking a question in a meeting, making a comment in a group of people, there's potential risk in almost anything that we say or do. And this framework can help. So this is a risk assessment framework. So when you tell your kids, think before you speak, this is what I'm talking about. Here's some of the things you can think about before making an action, saying something that might have potential risk. Making sense? So the funny framework offers information, gives insight, leads to better decisions, helps avoid inappropriate things. I've replaced the word joke with things. Avoiding inappropriate things helps reduce undesirable consequences. You don't want to have to produce a video apology. You don't want to get punched in the nose. You don't want bad things to happen, whether you're assessing a tool, reporting a bug. You want good things to happen. This funny framework can help avoid undesirable consequences. So here's just the headers of those different things. I was going to open it up. Who here has an example of how this might help you in your daily work? I've given the example of reporting a bug and some other high-level examples of assessing a tool or doing testing. How might this help you in your job? I'll go with you first. Yes.
So we do testing tools, so I work with a lot with other teams, and sometimes there's issues on that, like systems not working, stuff like that. And there's always like a project chat where the bosses are present. And also there, sometimes when it's a certain person's fault or he needs to fix it, it would be much easier to talk directly to him. Because if I expose his problems to his boss, then there's a lot of bad blood there, rightfully. So the context and the audience, yes.
Perfect example. I like that. You want to avoid an unintended, undesirable consequence of somebody taking perhaps perhaps undue blame, and the consequences that can come from that. So that's a great example. So you're using some of the elements of the framework, perhaps already. I'm just making them explicit again. So that's a great example. Did you have one?
Yeah, building on the bug report. So taking multiple bug reports, say for a project, and analyzing what are the trends, what are the patterns from this project of the bugs we found versus what escaped. And doing a summary, you have to be, I think, thinking of the framework, because things like, oh, we had a missed requirement. The audience, if the BAs are seeing that, how are they going to interpret that statement? Developers can be a little touchy when it comes to their code, so trying to do something to get better can absolutely lead to controversy.
So you're talking about not just the different audiences, but the interpretations per audience. That's fantastic. Great example. Yes, back there.
I happen to be a part of a new team that I'm coming into, and I'm leading out on a lot of changes that they wanted me to make. And so going in there and getting buy-in while still saying your processes suck,
Yes.
finding a way.
Perhaps in different words.
But finding a way to sit there and do that and say, do a contextual thing of, well, you were dealing under certain circumstances or other things, and saying, this is how we're coming in and starting to refine this, all the things that you wanted to do, now we can do, and starting to reframe the context.
Being a change agent in any company, delivering good and potentially bad news is the cousin to telling jokes, I think, in many ways. Yeah, that's a great example. Yes, back there.
Yeah, I will, implement this to my AI assistant.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then before posting anything, I will ask and I will release anything.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be summarized and reminder thing. Yeah.
My talk yesterday was called Trust But Verify Explained, where I talked about the importance of trust and when it's appropriate and inappropriate, and when you should rely on evidence-based knowledge and use skepticism to approach. And what you just said applies to that talk as well as this one. That's a great comment, especially when dealing with AI that may have output that is misinformation, and pausing and reflecting, running through the framework, whether you can trust the output or not, all relevant. Wonderful comment. Thank you. More? Yeah.
Sort of tying into early, coming into a new thing and delivering, bad news. Sometimes it's negative feedback in a sense of questioning what someone's doing. You have to keep your own reputation in mind. So if you've got that history rapport of working with a certain developer, they may take your feedback, much better than if you're new on a team. and you're not as familiar with the current process or why they're doing stuff, and, you know, some of the reasons they've made some of their decisions, giving your own reputation.
Wrong, always. No. That was excellent. And that again, kind of builds, you said your reputation was one of the funny, framework factors that's up there, but also your reputation is married to trust. How much do they trust you? How much do you trust them? So these are very, intertwined ideas and concepts. So another great example. And I will call out one thing. I said it's not gonna be funny. I want to tell one joke. And it's not really a joke, it's something that Andy said to me yesterday. And I was geeking, I've been geeking, yesterday, the day before, I'm geeking for 2 days about this because I'm a really tough, I did improv for 15 years, I'm a student and a super fan of comedy, so I'm a really tough crowd when it comes to jokes. And I appreciate when I hear something that actually makes me smile genuinely. So I was here first time in Salt Lake and I said, my gosh, there is not a single direction you can look around here and not see something beautiful. Everywhere you look, it's gorgeous. And Andy, without listening to me, he goes, except for there, he points at me. Chef's kiss. I was giggling about it. Love it. So, all right, so I had to give it back to you. These are fantastic examples. I think that you're starting to see how this can not only apply to your work life and bugs, but it also applies to using AI, which may be professional or not, but it applies to anything that you're dealing with where there's an action, a statement, where there's potential risk. Let's tie it up. This is Reid Hoffman, one of the founders of LinkedIn. Everything in life has some risk. What you actually have to do is learn how to navigate it. It's more than just saying, think before you speak. It's going into the details, into the weeds, and figuring out how to navigate and mitigate and assess risk so that you can avoid these undesirable consequences. But here's a better quote. Here's Dwight Schrute. Whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing. Follow Dwight's advice and you should be fine. So is this joke appropriate? Is this comment appropriate? Is this test? Is this various different things that this framework applies to? Is this thing appropriate? I hope that this framework can be used in a professional and a non-professional way. Just as a little epilogue to this, one of the reasons I created this talk was I've worked at many different companies in my career, and I'd often run into wizards of risk assessment, people that are formally trained and are fantastic at coming in and looking at a project, a process, whatever, and assessing the risk and producing these lovely reports. I am amazed at what they do. And then I go out to lunch with them and they speed and swerve through traffic and they don't wear their seatbelt and they eat unhealthy. And I'm just like, it blows my mind that so many people have this talent that they use in a professional context and throw it out in other areas of life that where it's useful as well. And that not only applies to risk assessment, but context. I said I'm a context-driven tester. I'm a context-driven person. There's a lot of concepts that you can use in a professional life that are applicable outside of life as well. I hope this is one of them. Thank you very much for your time. Hope to see you. Thank you.
Did you want a jerk?
Oh, yeah, you got jokes. Yeah, let's hear it.
I have
Now
a
you can
niche.
use the framework to figure it out. Should I tell this or not? All right.
I have a niche Star Wars joke for the fans in the room. What is the temperature inside of a tauntaun?
The temperature inside of a tauntaun. The tauntaun. Okay, I don't know.
The guy on Hoth that like falls over in the
Oh,
snow.
oh, right.
Cut the belly open.
Lukewarm. Woo! Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah.
I'm offended by that. That's awesome. Nice job.
It's not my joke, but it's great.
Any jokes, comments, questions?
I have an inappropriate joke.
No, I know we've got.
We'll be the judge of that.
All right. One of my favorite jokes. What's the difference between Michael Jackson and an astronaut? An astronaut walks on the moon and Michael Jackson molested little boys. Yeah. Oh, has it been too soon? I don't think so.
What are we gonna do?
That's gonna be retold so many times.